What do you think about Nick Sorensen potentially getting the axe?
I think he's got to go, man. A few weeks ago, I was willing to give him the excuses that everyone was giving Kyle, that everyone was giving Brock about injury. I can't do it. 47 points to the Cardinals of all teams. Like, you can't do that, man. So I feel like this team needs a lot of resetting. I would like to talk about Kyle being involved in that equation, but that's not going to happen. So let's focus on what could happen, and that means Brian Schneider needs to go. Nick Sorensen needs to go. They need to get a guy in here that can really it has experience running defenses, and they can put this team back together defensively, because that's what they're going to need.
To me, what's weird about this, though, is like, I mean, if they fire Nick Sorensen, I don't have a problem with it. They should have never – he was the wrong hire. He should have never been the defensive coordinator of this team. But, like, firing another defensive coordinator after 1 year, especially after, like, the bad season that Kyle Shanahan just had, like, yeah, 47 against the Cardinals is unacceptable. But 6 points against the Rams is unacceptable.
True.
And it's like, well, they're not going to fire Kyle Shanahan, and you got to fire someone, so let's fire the defensive coordinator for the second year in a row. And it's like, yeah, I don't really care. I don't think he's that good, and I think you could find another one. And if you can get a better defensive coordinator, then you should get a better defensive coordinator. But, like, it feels kind of messed up a little bit. Like, really, you got fired on your day off? The game didn't even count. Kyle didn't even call plays. He let Clay Kubiak call the play. He didn't even do anything. But you got fired.
Yeah, man.
You should have delegated those play calling duties, baby. You should have let someone else do it.
He was never the right hire. I don't think Staley is the right hire. I don't think Sorensen was the right hire. He doesn't seem like he doesn't have head coach potential. I'll put it that way. If your defensive coordinator doesn't have head coach potential, he's probably the wrong candidate for defensive coordinator. Sorensen doesn't seem like a leader of men, like we always like to say in regards to Kyle. Kyle's a much more greater leader of men than Sorensen is, as much as I think Kyle's at to blame. And so I think Sorensen was never the right hire. I think firing Wilks was just about personality conflict with Kyle. Wilks was a much better coordinator than Sorensen, but the personalities didn't match. So now Kyle needs to find that perfect match of personality, head coach potential, and aptitude at the defensive coordinator position. And so it is time to move on from Sorensen. Sorensen should never have been hired.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think what's interesting about this particular job is we're going to talk about potential candidates now, but like whoever gets this job, yeah, you're getting brought in because of scheme, kind of, but much more because of culture and the fact that Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans pretty much set the culture of this team, and they've kind of gotten away from it. And I think if and when they make Brock Purdy the highest paid player on the team and one of the highest paid players in the league, they can win with Brock, but I think they've shown there's a very specific way they win with Brock, and it's when he doesn't throw very much. When he's throwing more than 30 times a game, it's not necessarily that pretty. So if he's going to throw 25, 30, 31 times a game, that they can win that way. But the only way that you can do that is if your defense is freaking really, really good. So like you said, you can't have some rookie defensive coordinator. They need to bring in someone with experience, someone who's a real leader of men. Like that's baseline.
That's baseline. And the 49ers need to have a really good coordinator. Like, if Brock Purdy's your quarterback of the future, then you need to play what the 49ers like to talk about all the time, which is complementary football. The 49ers have to have a good defense if they want to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy at quarterback. If I'm being real, excuse me, did I cuss? Did you guys hear me cussing? Or is that just when
your internet kind of cut that one out?
All right, cool. That was good. That was good. Yeah, the internet's been pissing me off. Am I frozen?
No, you're back.
Okay.
What are you saying?
49ers need complementary football to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy as their quarterback. They have to have a top 5 defense, and Sorensen was never going to get you there. They need to get back to that.
I think it's pretty clear that if the Niners could get Robert Saleh, they would love that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but Robert Saleh is a hell of a defensive coordinator. And if they could get him, that would be probably the best case scenario. I just don't see it happening. I feel like it would be, it wouldn't be a bad look for Robert Saleh, but I think some people could sort of perceive it as like coming back with your tail between your legs, kind of a, Not even a lateral move, but a backwards move. Maybe he'd like to prefer to go somewhere else. I don't know.
I think that's the thing. Like, I would like Saleh first and foremost, but I don't know if Saleh wants to take that step because, even though he'll probably just be a defense coordinator somewhere else, same role he had here with 49ers, it's that feeling of I'm going backwards. And I don't know if Robert wants to do that. I know you got a connection with Robert, man. Hit him up. Let's get the inside info, Grant.
All right, I'm going to hit him up. Hey, Robert, you going to coach this team or what? Let me know. Blink twice if you're going to coach this team. So save Robert Saleh coming here. I think the name we heard a lot last year that the Niners wanted was Jeff Ulbrich. He was Saleh's defensive coordinator, and then he became the interim head coach when Saleh got unfairly fired this year. Jets didn't play so well. They ranked 20th in points allowed per game, third in yards, but 20th in points allowed. There's a world where Ulbrich's their number one choice. What do you think of Ulbrich?
I think he's the guy that's going to be hired. That's if I had to make a prediction, that's who they get. I think it's either going to be Saleh or Ulbrich. I think those are the two guys. One of those two guys is who we're going to get, and I don't think Saleh is going to take that step. So I think Ulbrich by process of elimination.
What do we know about Ulbrich as a coach? He was the defensive coordinator with
this Wi-Fi
Atlanta Falcons 1 year, and his defense ranked, 29th in points. Then he went to coach with Saleh, and that defense was really good for the last few years. But how much was it Saleh and how much was it Ulbrich? That's my thing. If you bring in Ulbrich, are you sure he's good, or are you just getting a guy who was benefiting from being around Robert Saleh?
That's true too, but I do think Ulbrich, he's got the mind, he's got the charisma, he's got the leadership. I feel like he could be a leader of men, a guy that could potentially be a head coach one day. He has the Bay Area ties. He was drafted by the 49ers in the year 2000.
Grew up in Morgan Hill.
He grew up in Morgan Hill. I think Ulbrich is the guy that they end up getting. I think that's, if I had to bet money, that's who I think it would be. Even though I prefer Saleh, I think Ulbrich is that guy they're going to get. And I think he'd be a head and shoulders above Sorensen and a better personality fit above Wilks.
Yeah. I have questions about Ulbrich. I mean, the Jets really struggled this year. Didn't seem like he necessarily could rally them or galvanize them the way that the organization thought that he might be able to. But yeah, he probably is the favorite. I got another name as a possible dark horse. Someone who I don't think has been linked to the Niners at all, but I think it's someone that they would be interested in. And I'm not sure that Ulbrich would be better than this guy. So I'll lay it out for you. I think the Niners want to stay with this Seattle defense. I think that's why they promoted Sorensen to begin with. They brought in Wilks. I don't think the players really wanted to deviate from this Seattle style defense that Robert Saleh installed and D'Amico Ryans coached as well. So you kind of have the scheme that Sorensen was running, but I think they want someone who's much more enthusiastic than Sorensen, much more of an alpha personality than Sorensen, and someone who's able, like Saleh and D'Amico, to get the defense to play with that kind of passion and urgency that we didn't see consistently the last season. So someone from that tree, maybe not a DB guy like Ulbrich, maybe a linebacker coach, because that's what Saleh was, that's what D'Amico was. And the Niners have had so much trouble blitzing and bringing pressure. DB coaches maybe are more coverage oriented. What about Ken Norton Jr.? Played for this team in '94, won a Super Bowl with them. He was a DC with the Raiders. He was a DC with the Seahawks. Then he went to UCLA, and their defense was top 10 in the country. Now he's in Washington as a linebackers coach with Dan Quinn. So he was the linebacker coach in Seattle once upon a time when Robert Saleh was the quality control. He's got the connection to Dan Quinn, who's got the connection to Kyle Shanahan. He's kind of similar to D'Amico in the sense that they're both middle linebackers who have a ton of passion and can get players to run through a freaking wall. And he has a background in the scheme that Kyle Shanahan wants to keep. I'm not saying he'll get the job, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets interviewed for it. And I don't know. Like, is Jeff Ulbrich that much more impressive than Ken Norton Jr.? Like, Jeff Ulbrich was a solid player. Ken Norton Jr. is a freaking Super Bowl champion. And he went to UCLA. Went to UCLA.
Ulbrich was a coach at UCLA for 3 years. There's that.
That's true. That's true. Damn,
They're very similar, actually. Very similar. Both Niner linebackers. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed for them to bring him into an interview. But what about going a different direction?
I can't tell if you're going to say something else.
So annoying. This Wi-Fi. So
okay.
Annoying. Okay. What about going a different direction? What about going after Dave viewed last year, who's been working under Spagnuolo for several years? What about going that direction? What about abandoning the wide nine and switching things up and going with somebody who's worked under the best defensive coordinator in the NFL for a few years?
I like that. If you're going to get a total philosophy shift on defense, why not bring in someone like Dave Merritt, who you interviewed last year and has been with Spagnuolo, who is one of the best? I agree. Yeah. I just don't think the Niners are going to do any type of philosophy shift. I think basically what they're telling us this year is that they want to change as little as possible. Like, they may even bring back Jake Moody, because he was pretty good before he hurt his ankle. And maybe it's Mitch Wisnowski's fault. Maybe it's Pat O'Connell's fault for not holding the ball properly, pristinely.
What do you think about Matt Barrow's idea of putting Sorensen back to special teams coordinator?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think it makes a difference who they put a defensive coordinator. I think they're going to suck at defensive coordinator. At special teams. They suck before Schneider. They suck with Schneider. I think they'll suck after Schneider. The head coach doesn't care about it, doesn't know about it, can't contribute to it. It's It's an afterthought. I mean, they throw resources at it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be just drafting a kicker in round 3 doesn't mean you have a good kicker.
I have a theory, and I want to share it with you, assuming my Wi-Fi holds up. Guys, I apologize for the Wi-Fi. I'm going to be a much better professional. I got it coming out here, but listen to this theory, Grant, if I can get it out before the Wi-Fi freezes. It's part of the reason why the 49ers special team sucks, because they're so top-heavy. And the guys that aren't starters that do play on the special teams are kind of bottom of the barrel. Do you think that has something to do with it?
I do think that's part of it, yes. But I think another thing that's big is the head coach is very detail-oriented when it comes to the offense. And I think that's a big part of the Niners' identity and culture. But he's not detail-oriented when it comes to special teams. He'll almost brag about how little he knows about special teams. He's not particularly detail-oriented when it comes to game management or the rules. So there are things that Kyle Shanahan knows like the back of his hand, and special teams ain't one of them. And if that's how your head coach approaches 1/3 of your, one phase of your team, I don't see how that can ever be a strength. If it is a strength, it seemed like it would be a strength by mistake, by accident.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
And when they had Robbie Gould, they were good. But now they have to find like a young guy. I mean, I bet you they'll try to bring in a vet. But are they going to find the next Robbie Gould? Like, probably not. And he's probably laughing.
I think I talked about it last week with you. I think Moody comes back and competes in the preseason and wins his job back. I don't even know if he's going anywhere. That's my guess. I really think that Mitch Wisnowski was not his holder, so they got that excuse. They'll say, it's a holder issue. They'll say his injury was an issue. Let's give him another chance, come back and compete. We spent a 3rd-round draft pick on him, and I think he does, and I think he does well in training camp, and I think when they need him most, he turns back into Jake Moody. That's my scary theory.